joining us on this thankful Thursday morning. For those of you that are joining us for the very first time, you've just connected with Morning Mocha Music and a Message. And if those of you that may not know who I am, I'm Bishop Tony D. Cobbin, Senior Pastor of Canaan Worship Center. And I host this every morning, Monday through Friday, starting at 8 a.m. every morning. We give people a little time to connect with us and join us. And this little period of time that we're enjoying right now, I call this our little meet and greet time early in the morning so we can greet one another. We've already met, most of us, but we're greeting one another. But if you've never been on with us and never typed anything in the chat room, we just encourage you to do so we can acknowledge you as being part of our Morning Mocha family. Tish H., good morning to you this morning. God bless all of you. Again, if you're joining us for the very first time and you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, take the time to do so and turn on your notifications so you will be notified each and every morning when we come on, or whenever the Spirit of the Lord inspires me to come on impromptu and just share something with you. I want you to be able to get the notifications of those times as well. This is a wonderful, beautiful, thankful Thursday morning. And as the psalmist declares, this is the day that the Lord has made, and I shall rejoice and be glad in it. Again, those of you that are joining us for the very first time, I want you to understand this is not necessarily a preaching platform, but I just share a little practical wisdom that'll help you navigate through your day-to-day living. I think the information that the Lord has given me to share with you will help you in your family situations. It'll help you in your career. It'll help you with just dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. And I believe all of us can stand to receive greater wisdom, more wisdom in those areas of our lives. It's all about interacting with people and how to engage the things that are happening around us, because sometimes some of us don't know how to really respond when certain things occur in our lives. And sometimes we face situations that we need a little wisdom in terms of what we should do given any situation. And I believe God has given me information and wisdom to share with you to advise you on how to handle certain situations, at least give you some suggestions. I'm not claiming to be the know-it-all person here. No one knows everything, but the wisdom that I can share, I believe it is inspired of God, is from the Lord, and I love sharing it with those who will hear and receive it. Lenny Eddington Passmore, good morning to you this morning. Before I get into what I want to really talk about today, I just want to encourage you all once again. We need to lift up our city. The shootings that have been occurring, I'm telling you, I'm starting to sound like a broken record even to myself, but it is tragic, the number of shootings that are taking place. And what's even more tragic about all of these shootings is that over the past 48 hours or so, I think there's been about at least three teenagers whose lives have been lost to gunfire. And that's sad. And if that's happening here in our city alone, imagine how much this is occurring across our nation. Y'all, we are in a serious situation, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And I think that for far too long, we've been somewhat complacent and even insensitive towards these occurrences that are taking place. I'm trying to hear the Spirit of the Lord in terms of what I can do to bring more attention or awareness to our need as believers to change how we approach things, how we deal with things. We need to take a different approach to the rearing of our children. Children have gotten way too far out of hand. And it's because a lot of the parents have drifted so far away from God. I just do not understand. Well, I guess I do understand it. It's the days and the times in which we live, but it seems as though the worse things get, the more suppressed the voice of the church becomes. And we need to become even louder. We need to raise our voices even the more and not be ashamed to speak out against these things, or at least express or voice your concerns for what's happening in the streets. It's not enough for us to just sit back and say, well, these young people, they're so awful, they're so this, they're so that. Well, I think we need to get to the root of the situation. And the root of the situation, it starts at the parents of these young people. We have just literally stopped parenting for some reason or another. It is so sad when parents are so reluctant to tell their children what's right and to insist on them doing what's right. It's so sad when parents refuse to do that for fear that they might lose their child as their buddy or their friend. I don't want to turn them away. I don't want to turn them off. So instead of turning them away or turning them off by telling them the truth, you rather turn them out into the street and allow whatever fate that's going to befall them to occur. That's just not wise. That's not what loving parents do. We need to get to the root of how it is all of these young people, I'm talking about teenagers, are getting their hands on guns. And what's so important, what's so complicated about the lives of our young people to whereas they feel like they need to settle everything with gunfire? I'm just trying to wrap my mind around that, Y'all know me, I'm not a politician. I don't claim to be a politician, but I truly believe that there needs to be a change in the position even now of our government, and instead of loosening the reins on morality, I think we need to buckle down and tighten things up a bit again. There are some old-fashioned principles that we need not get rid of. I've said this before. I said this before, and I think it bears repeating. The level of respect that has been just wiped away simply because most of us have ascribed to this modern thinking. It has caused such a tremendous strain and placed our entire community, our entire people in a negative position. What am I referring to? Again, back in the day, I remember that young people, when they addressed adults, it was yes ma'am, yes sir. Okay, you talking about, well, that sounds old-fashioned, and that sounds like a slave mentality. No, we need to get away from that, that's just, it's just showing respect, if you will, It's showing respect for our elders, and in our household, it was insisted upon. When we answered our parents, it wasn't what. No. It was yes or yes, ma'am, yes, sir, or whatever. It's just a sign of respect. It let our parents know that we were submitted to their authority, we acknowledged their authority, and that we respected them the way they deserved to be respected. Maybe one of the reasons why we don't insist on that anymore is because of the fact that we're not doing the things that are necessary for our children to respect us. Your children can't watch you act in one way in one place and then totally different in another place, especially those of us who are believers. If we're going to be worshipers in the sanctuary, in the house of God, then our worshipful spirit ought to be reflected in our homes as well. Our children, our families ought to be able to see that we are real about our relationship with God, and we seek to honor God not just in the house of God, but outside of the house of God. One of the things that has tremendously messed up and even confused our young people is when their parents are living double lives, or lives of double standards. You know, you know, we understand that children may not appreciate our strict adherence to the word of God, and following the standards of God. They may not initially appreciate it. They may not feel as though, well, mom and dad, you're too strict and you're too stiff and you're too that or whatever. But we can't allow the children to dictate to us how we're going to raise them. We have the mandate as parents to train up a child. The onus is on the parent to train up the child. The scripture doesn't say to the children, dictate to the parents, but it says to the parents, train up a child in a way that he should go. And when he's old, he will not depart from it. It does not mean that that child will never make mistakes. It does not mean that that child will never make bad decisions, but what it does say is when you're constantly pouring into them and giving them the example by which to live, when you allow them to see something in you, to see what's right in you, that as they grow and mature, they will come to appreciate the wisdom that you've poured into them and the example that you have set before them. And they'll be able to say, you know what, if nothing else, I know my parents are real about their relationship with God. That was one of the things that myself and my siblings could say without any hesitation, that our parents were real about their relationship with God, and they modeled it before us. And yes, again, at the time when we were growing up, we didn't always appreciate that because we were not allowed to do some of the things that the other children in the neighborhood were allowed to do. We thought our parents were being overly strict and protective. But as time went on, as we began to mature, as we became parents ourselves, we became much more appreciative of the way our parents raised us. I will never forget years ago when we were having pastoral celebration for my mother and father there at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church, and I was on to do the message for the closeout of the anniversary, and I remember looking at my dad and across the pulpit. I said, I never thought I'd say this, but I thanked him for every whipping that he gave me. Did I agree with all of them at the time? Of course not. But because of how he chastised me, not beat me. Now, there's a difference between chastisement and beating. He never beat us, but he didn't spare the rod either. Okay, I thanked him for it because it shaped me and caused me to become the man that I am even to this day. It gave me a sense of discipline. It caused me to know how to respect authority, know how to respect my elders, if you will, and that's what's lost in our society today. Our young people have very little or absolutely no respect for authority. They feel as though no one can tell them anything. They ought to be able to do whatever they want to do, and that's just absolutely not right. We don't live in that kind of world where we can do whatever it is we want to do. Now, you might do it. They might do it, but they got to understand that there comes with their actions consequences and repercussions, And so I really, truly believe that when we get back to that old-fashioned training, that old-fashioned wisdom, where parents are speaking what is truth and not worried about whether or not they hurt that child's feelings. They're just speaking what is true. What is this thing about you hurt my feelings all about anyway. You hurt my feelings. You hurt my. Everybody gets their feelings hurt, but at the same time, they those same people who are always crying, "You're hurting my feelings." They go from one person to the next, disrespecting other people. No regard for the feelings of others, no regard or respect for the property or the space of others. It's just ridiculous. But we as parents and grandparents, we've got to get to the point where we say, hey, listen, here's the real deal. And you can take it or leave it, but I'm going to tell you the truth. And from that, speak truth to these children. Let them know what life is really all about. I can remember my junior year in high school when I was having a few issues. It's not that I was doing anything terrible or whatever, but there were certain things that were occurring that I just didn't like. And I mounted my own personal protest against those things. And my mother said something to me that really impacted me, and it stayed with me even to this day. She said, son, there are some things in life that you're not going to like. There's some people in life that are not always going to treat you the way you want to be treated, but because of the position you'll be in, you'll have to learn how to suffer through some things or take some things for the good of yourself and your family. That's the way you're going to have to be able to maintain employment, to stay on a job so you can feed or provide for your family. That thing stuck with me, and it changed my whole perspective on dealing with adversity and handling confrontation, or even now dealing with things that I felt was unjust or unfair that was occurring in my life. And I think those type of lessons need to be taught to our children today. Our society has become way too liberal and way too loose. And, we keep talking about having order and things need to be right. And we want to put the blame everywhere but where it needs to be. Now, there's enough blame to go around. There's enough blame to be shared. I think all of us can take a little bit of blame for a lot of the things that go on in our society. But at some point, we've got to stop pointing the finger of blame and get right down to the nitty gritty and the root of the matter and start addressing the real issue. We got to start addressing the real problem, what the real deal is. And as bad as we don't want, as we may not want to admit it, the reality is some of the things that we have dismissed as being old-fashioned and not applicable for today's society. I'm sorry. We need to go back and revisit those things, reconsider those things, rethink those things, and really reinstill some of the things that we have dismissed out of our society. And I believe when we do that, the temperature of our atmosphere, of our social atmosphere, will change. I truly believe it will change. I believe that things can turn around and start to turn for the better. And let me say this before I get off that soapbox. I truly also believe a lot of what's going on is directly connected to some of the chaotic things we are even now seeing in nature. Again, I tell you all, I pay attention to the news, and I was watching the report yesterday and this morning of how the Colorado River has dropped way below levels. The water at the Hoover Dam has dropped tremendously below level, and the water supply is starting to get a little scarce. Because that tributary, if you will, those bodies of water out there that have dropped so low, it services over 40 million people in 7 different states. Okay. And you all may not think about this, but I want to bring this to your attention. Now, out there, out west, southwest, however region you want to place that. I think it's Southwest. Anyway, there's a drought, more or less. There's a severe drought. And the farming industry and all of that is presently being affected by that severe drought. But then you go out southeast, and cities and states are being inundated with water. I mean, enormous amounts of rainfall in a 24-hour period. Roads are being washed out, and people's houses are being flooded. Cities are being flooded. And then if that's not taking place, tornadoes are ripping through regions, tearing up homes and destroying communities. Nature is out of control. It is unpredictable. And the sad part about it is that man can do absolutely nothing about what's happening in nature. You go further west into California, you got all the wildfires, the brush fires that are occurring, burning up property, burning up land, and all of that. Y'all, we need to wake up as believers. We got to get back to God. Stop living your life as though you're so comfortable that you don't need God anymore. It's amazing to me. How many of you have people that you once could have a good godly conversation with that you no longer can have those conversations with because those friends or those circle of friends or those certain people have said, you know what, I'm not into that anymore. I'm not about all that. I done found the truth and this, that, and the other. And they have just turned themselves totally away from God. And they're comfortable with it. They think it's all good. But I truly believe that we are flirting with utter disaster if we don't change the way we think. On a social level, on an atmospheric level, on just about every level, we're flirting with disaster simply because we have lost our sense of morality. Morals are not a thing of high priority anymore. Everybody just wants to do what they want to do, act the way they want to act, and feel as though that everything is going to be all right. You better get in the Word of God. Start reading the scriptures. Believe the prophecies. Know the signs of the time. It's so important that we do that. So let me talk to you about what I really want to talk to you about today. How about that? I want to ask you a question. Are you impressive or repulsive? I want you to think about that question. Are you impressive or repulsive? It has been said that the first impression is often a lasting impression. And I personally find this to be true. I'm very much inclined to agree with that. I know that that can be the case with me. Sometimes when I first meet people, those first impressions can stay with me a long time. Here's what we got to understand. Most people make a conclusion about you within the first 10 minutes of meeting you. That's all it really takes is the first 10 minutes of meeting you. You might be thinking, Bishop, that's not fair. But it's really not a matter of fairness, but rather a judgment or conclusion made based on your presentation of yourself. How are you presenting yourself? When you first meet people, how are you presenting yourself from the very first moment of the introduction? And I know some people don't really think about that. They don't really think about how they are really coming off, how they are presenting themselves. even at the point of introduction. Listen, whenever two people meet for the very first time, there is an initial period of measuring one another up. Y'all know this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And there's a whole lot that is processed during this initial period of measuring one another up, because messages are being sent back and forth between the two people. We're doing it unconsciously. We don't even know at times that we're sending certain messages, but we are. And you know this to be true because you know that when you're meeting a person for the very first time, you're making mental assessments of that individual yourself. It involves the handshake. Okay? When you shake hands with a person for the very first time, there's a message sent with the handshake. If that person has a pretty decent, firm handshake, you're likely to believe that this person is not a person that is apt to be trying to hide something. You know, if that person just kind of lays their hand in your hand and give you this little kind of limpy, handshake or whatever. And I know that some of you are saying, well, nowadays it really doesn't matter because we're not shaking hands as much due to the COVID-19 virus. But let's go back prior to that, okay? There's a lot said in a handshake. Now, personally, I'm kind of turned off when a person seems not to want to shake my hand for the very first time when we're being introduced to one another. As a matter of fact, it makes me feel as though maybe they think that I have some type of communicable disease. Now, some of y'all might be saying, well, with COVID-19, we find that to be, come on, y'all. Let's dismiss all of that. We're not talking about that. Let's go back to prior to the pandemic, prior to COVID-19. And you all know that a handshake sends a message, whatever that message may be. It also involves a message being sent through facial expression. How do you look? What's the expression on your face when you meet someone? Do you have a scowl on your face? Do you have a smile on your face? Does your face send the message, oh, it's good to meet you? Yeah, your facial expressions can send a message. It involves reading the inflections of and the tones of the voice. There's a whole lot said in the inflection and the tones used when communicating. I hate to meet people and when we're introduced to one another, they mumble back to me as though they really don't want to speak to me. Hey, how you doing? Come on, man, open your mouth. Speak up. If I'm saying to you, hey, good to meet you, and you, hey, that sends the wrong message. It sends a very negative message. It is really saying that they're likely not that thrilled to meet you. Sometimes it can send the message that you are beneath me. This is all in the first 10 minutes. It involves interpreting the messages conveyed through the words used in conversation. Some people can be very flippity right from the very start. Say some things that are somewhat offensive right from the very start. All of this is taking place within the first 10 minutes of meeting a person. Now, by nature, I'm pretty much a jovial person. I'm pretty much upbeat all of the time. And I'm specifically that way when I'm meeting people for the very first time, because for me, it is so important that I send a positive or make a positive impression upon the people that I'm meeting for the very first time. Now, one of the things that influences that is, first of all, that I love people. I am a people person. I can be around people a great deal of time, and it doesn't bother me. I find a way to intermingle with people. I find a way to converse with people. If people will talk to me, I will talk to people. And it doesn't matter what their ethnicity is, doesn't matter what their background may be. If they talk with me, I will talk with them. You know. And I will say this, based on how they're communicating with me, that will determine how long the conversation will be. Now, I'm not going to be standing around and be disrespected by anyone or have a bunch of foolishness spewed my way where I just stand there and waste my time listening to a bunch of foolishness. No, I'm not going to do that. But if when I dismiss myself from that individual, I do it very respectfully, and thereby, even though I'm dismissing myself from the presence of that individual, I leave what could be a positive impression upon them. There have been times I've had to tell people, well, listen, I'm going to have to go right now. I got some things that I've got to take care of, but I hope you have a blessed rest of your day, okay? And that's my way of politely excusing myself. I don't turn up my nose at people. You know, I don't frown my face or my brow at people upon meeting them or greeting them. It's so important. And I think this is something that all of us need to stop and consider. How are we presenting ourselves to other people? After an initial meeting, each party walks away thinking one of three things. I want you to think about this. They either walk away thinking, I like that person, or they're thinking, I don't like that person. Or they walk away thinking, I really don't know about that person. And when they say, I really don't know about that person, they're somewhat leaning toward the negative. They haven't completely come down on the negative side. They have decided within themselves, maybe I need to gather some more information about this individual before I make a final conclusion. But at any rate, an impression has been left on each person about the other person. I believe this to be the case. Some of you that came and visited Canaan for the first time, I was able to leave an impression on you, first of all, from my presentation from the pulpit. But then, when after service, First Lady and I were at the front door, greeting people and shaking their hands, some of you were like, wow, he's a friendly person. I like this pastor. I'm going to stay. I'm going to join this church. Now, I know some of you had that experience, and that's how you decided you were going to become members of Canaan Worship Center. It's because of the impression that was made upon you. But I will say this. I know that there have been experiences where people have come in and I didn't get a chance to make an impression upon them because somebody upset them before they got into the building good. And I've known of people who have walked away and said, I'm never coming back here ever again, simply because the wrong somebody got to them first and made the wrong impression upon them. It's a reality, y'all. I hate to say that. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend as though that Canaan has always been this perfect church and that everybody has always been perfectly inviting to whomever comes into the building. I'm not going to say that because that would not be the case. It would not be true at all. I do know and understand that there have been people who have been in places of representation there around the building at Canaan Worship Center who left a negative impression upon people, and they left and decided they wouldn't come back simply because the wrong impression, they were left with the wrong impression or with the negative impression. It may have been the right impression based on the situation, but it was a negative impression. So again, think about this. How much consideration do you give to the impression you leave on other people? Some people are just indifferent to the matter. They don't give much thought to it. Oh, well, I never really think about it. I'm just going to do me. Some people are very aware of the impression they leave on others. They are intentional in terms of trying to make a positive, lasting impression. I fall into that category. I'm very intentional in trying to make a good impression on those who I come in contact with. My wife and I, when we were out celebrating our anniversary on the other night at the restaurant, there was a pastor that came up to me, and I wasn't very familiar with this pastor. I knew he was a pastor, but I didn't really know him. I knew he was a pastor, but I didn't really know anything personal about him. And he stopped and he gave me one of his cards. He said, could you give me a call? I really would like to talk to you about some things. And I said, of course. And so as we was leaving the restaurant, he reiterated, hey, I really want to talk to you. I said, okay. I said, listen, I'm going to give you a call. I'm going to try maybe possibly even tomorrow that I'm going to give you a call. And so he was thankful that I made that commitment. And last night, just before I was preparing myself to go to bed, I remembered I told that pastor I was going to try to call him today. So I picked up the phone last night and I called that pastor. And I said, I apologize for calling so late. I said, but, I wanted to keep my word. I told you that I was going to likely call you today, and I want to fulfill my word. Now, what kind of impression do you think that left upon him? It would say to him, well, okay, Bishop Cobbins is a man of integrity. He's a man of his word. And it meant a whole lot to me. I was ready to go to bed. And I'm going to be honest with you. It was about 9 o'clock. It was 9:06 when I was about to head to bed. That's right. I stopped and remembered, and I called him. And hopefully it was really a blessing to him. It was important to me because I wanted to leave him with the right impression of who I am. I don't want anybody else to decide who I am based on assumptions and innuendos. I wouldn't want him to go to someone else and try to get an assessment of me and run the risk of him running into someone who really just doesn't like me and decide to give him the wrong impression of who I really am. So that's important to me. I want to make the right impression, a lasting impression, a positive impression. Some people simply just don't care. It doesn't matter what impression they leave on others, of themselves. They just don't care. But is that wise? Is that a wise thing to do, to have a I just don't care attitude about what impression you leave on other people? I would think not. That, to me, in my estimation, that's just not wise. I want you to consider how you typically present yourself to strangers, and ask yourself the question, do I come off as impressive or do I come off as repulsive? Okay. So what constitutes repulsiveness? Because, I know that word repulsive, it sounds really harsh. And some of you have painted the worst picture possible in your mind. But let me classify it like this. I believe there's such a thing as passive repulsiveness. You may not be blatantly repulsive, but you can be passively repulsive. How so? You're greeting or meeting someone and you're appearing as though you're standoffish. Or you're acting as though you're bothered or irritated just because the introduction requires a response from you. That's repulsive. Acting totally disinterested or checked out at the time. That is repulsive. And that manifests itself sometime in reluctance to make eye contact with the person. Reluctant to even now speak up and respond to the person. That is repulsive. If you're being introduced to me, I don't want to look at you and find you looking all around the room as though you're searching for somebody else more important. As though you're so important that I'm beneath you, to the degree that I'm not deserving of you giving me a few seconds, a few moments of your time to genuinely take the time to engage in a proper introduction. It's repulsive when you're responding to the introduction with absolutely no enthusiasm and mumbling under your voice. That's repulsive. That mumbling stuff. Okay. And some people might say, well, that might just be the way the person talks. No, well, if that's the way you talk, you need to go get some speaking class, take some speaking classes or introduction classes or, etiquette classes. Speak up. Let people hear you. Show some sense of interest when you're being introduced to someone else. Some of that is the result of people just being vain, stuck on themselves, thinking everything is about them. Some people get lifted up in pride and think they're all that when everybody else is absolutely nothing. That's repulsive. What about this? This is repulsive. Scanning the person up and down as though you're making an inspection of them that requires that they pass your inspection. That kind of thing there where you kind of looking up and down the person. And they have this face, they're making this face as though they're saying, whatever, you ain't all that. Or, you got on that? They're making that kind of face because you're sending messages with your face. That's repulsive. That is absolutely repulsive. How about this? a person acting as though the pleasure is all the other individuals and not theirs. You act like the pleasure is all yours, not mine. You ought to feel honored to meet me. I've met, First Lady and I, we've met a lot of well-known people in our travels, in the connections and relationships that we've developed over the years. And one thing we do not do, we do not become overwhelmed with a person's celebrity. We can tell you that there have been many in the music industry, the gospel music industry, that we have met personally, have been in their presence, have sat and ate dinner with them. We're not awed by their celebrity. Why is that? One of the reasons why is because And this is not vanity, this is not arrogance, but I don't minimize my value as a person, and I never stop considering what I can bring to the table should this celebrity and myself develop a relationship. Because number one, I go in, I never approach a person of influence or celebrity from the standpoint of, let me see what I can get out of them. And I've had people ask me, hey, what can I do for you? What do you need me to do? What can I give you? And I let people know relationship is more important to me than anything. A person can give you money, money runs out. Relationships, when they're established on the right thing, when they're established with integrity and authenticity, they can last forever. That's what's most valuable to me. Now, before you be one of those persons that conclude that it really doesn't matter how others perceive you, you may want to reconsider your thinking. Let me give you a passage of scripture to land on. Hebrews 13:2. Hebrews 13:2. The word of God says, do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Think about that. I want you to consider this. You never know whose presence you are in. You never know. And don't allow looks to cause you to make your final conclusion. Because sometimes people don't look like who they really are. Second thing you need to understand is that you never know when you may cross this person's path again. Listen, you might be meeting this person for the very first time, and you give off a negative impression. You apply for a job somewhere, and the person that's the director of HR, you walk in and you find out that it's that very person that you snubbed during the introduction of the two of you just the other day. You never know that the stranger you're meeting might be the very angel that God sent and commissioned to be a blessing to you. Yes, that could very well be the case. While you're snubbing this person, while you're being repulsive toward this individual, the impression you leave on a stranger may come back to either bless you or bite you. You got to decide which one it's going to be. And I want you to understand that presentation is everything. That being the case, your presentation of yourself should always be, number one, it should be warm. A warm presentation. A hearty felt handshake. It should be inviting. A hearty and well-heard salutation. How you doing? Good morning. Good to meet you. You leave an impression. Remember, this could be an angel. God could have sent an angel for you to entertain. Your presentation should be intelligent, not offensive on any level. You meet a person for the first time, don't say dumb stuff. I'm just keeping it real, y'all. Don't say dumb stuff. If you don't know exactly what to say, then allow them to do most of the talking. That would serve in your best interest anyhow. Show that you're interested in the other individual. Hey, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living? Oh, wow. Just allow them to talk if they're so inclined to do that. your presentation as it pertains to your attire. And I know a lot of people get sensitive and touchy on this, but I believe attire matters as well. Your attire should be presentable. I'm gonna say this. My wife and I were having this discussion the other day. It really bothers me when our people come out in public looking like they just rolled out of bed and didn't have a good night's sleep. Come on, your presentation ought to be presentable, and it ought to be respectable. Again, that's one of those old-fashioned principles. Our parents made sure that when we left the house that we looked like we belonged to somebody. You know, we didn't have all the designer clothing and all that, but it was clean. It was pressed. We wore it right. You know, back in the day, boys kept their shirts tucked in. You know, you don't want to see no shirt tails hanging out. Young ladies covered up. They were respectable. Your presentation as far as your attire shouldn't be overbearing. It should not cause you to make a spectacle of yourself, looking like you came out of a circus. Yeah, I said it. Some of y'all get mad, but it's true. You shouldn't look like you are part of a circus act. You're out in public. It shouldn't cause you to appear to be suspect. Okay. I'm going to say this, and I know it's not going to be popular with some people, but for our young men, I don't want to see your underwear. Why are you going to wear your pants and then buckle them up below your rear end and exposing all your... Nobody needs to see that. Hello. I've never been one who's been a fan of sagging. Pull your pants up. Your pants were designed to cover your rear end. You know, you want to go looking like anything and then expect a company to hire you. Yeah, I'm looking for a job, you know. I just need to make some money, dog. It's poor presentation. That's repulsive. And then when you don't get hired, see, that's what the problem is. They ain't trying to do us right. Nobody wants you representing their company with your rear end out. Okay. Okay, I gotta calm down. Okay. And really, parents, we got to go back to telling our young people that. Well, it's just how it is today. No, it's not how it is today. It's how we're allowing it to be. First Lady said, young ladies, take those bonnets off. Do something with your head. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but there are times that we can be very repulsive with our presentation of ourselves. You've got to dress for the environment that you're going to place yourself in. Are you listening to me? If you intend to work in a business environment, and that business environment requires business attire. You can't go up in a company talking about, well, I'm just expressing me. I'm just being me. Okay, you can be you all day long, but you're going to be you somewhere else. You're going to be you unemployed. It's just something to think about. Listen, bottom line is this. When you present yourself in a manner that is impressive to others, you open the doors of possibility for people of influence to show you favor. Favor. A smile, a tone, the the way you present yourself, people go, okay. Business owners will show you favor when you present yourself in the right manner. Company managers will show you favor. People who possess knowledge that can greatly benefit you, they'll show you favor. You present yourself in a way that you're open to learning, that you know how to interact with people. People will be glad to show you some things. They'll be glad to lend you a helping hand because they'll come to the conclusion that their time is not wasted. I mean, think of that. Think about it. Nobody wants to waste their time on someone who's going to just take it and throw it away and not put their best foot forward to be as impressive as they can. You never know. People who are public figures, people who are public figures of influence will show you favor when you have the right presentation and make the right impression upon other people. What about common people who are just in the position to help other people? They'll show you favor. You make the right presentation. You may wind up connecting with a potential lifetime friend. And it's all because you make the right first impression. You may even meet a potential future spouse making the right impression. Let me tell y'all something. I think I've shared this. I hope I've shared this. Yeah, I've shared this with First Lady before. But when I first got interested in First Lady, I did something, or I was doing something that I didn't particularly tell her about when I was making an assessment. And let me tell you what that something was. Every chance that I would get, I would go and look in her car to see how clean it was. Some of you are saying, what? Yes, I would go and look in her car. And she always kept her car immaculately clean. And I'm saying to myself, that's good. Why was that important to me? Because I felt like if she would keep her car that clean, then she would keep her house that clean. And I was right on point. First Lady is an immaculate housekeeper. She loves for her house to be totally in order. I told you all about the story of when we first got married and we had come home from morning worship and we were going to eat dinner and go back to afternoon service. And I pulled off my shoes and just kind of left them near the door there in the living room. And she looked at me. She looked down at my shoes. She looked at me again. She looked down at my shoes. And by this time, and she didn't say anything. But I'm looking at her, looking at me, and I'm like, what? And she goes, your shoes don't go there. And in my macho spirit, I was ready to tell her, well, let's get something straight right now. This is my house. I wanted to tell her that. And the Spirit of the Lord said, don't you say a word, move your shoes. So it must have worked because I moved my shoes and we celebrated 25 years of marriage on the other night. Oh, whoa, my gosh. But that was an impression that she made on me right from the start. And come to find out that my assessment was right. It was a lasting impression. She eventually became my wife because of that first impression that she made upon me. Some of you might say, that's something that trivial. That's not trivial. That was major to me. It said to me that she believed in order in her life. Yeah, a clean car. It said she believed in order. It said that she was not a lazy person. It said that she was diligent in taking care of her business. And I'm telling you, all of that is absolutely true. My wife is meticulously organized. You know, I tell y'all all the time, I'm not as organized as she is. You know, I guess I didn't get that gift like that. But she used to would say little things to me, you know, to kind of push me toward my organization. But she don't say nothing to me. She just keeps her areas so meticulously organized that every now and then I just get shamed and have to do something to make mine look reasonably good. Okay. You know, we bring balance to one another. Praise God. Now, that's not to say I'm not an orderly person, because I'm very orderly. You know, it's just that I'm not as meticulous as her with regards to keeping areas as straight as I could. Now, I'm not nasty. No. I'm not dirty. No. But every now and then I let things get out of, order for a little bit before I go and start really straightening things up. Okay. Let me leave you with this. Never minimize the importance of making great impressions on whomever is in your presence. It's important that you do that. Don't minimize. You never know. Again, you never know who you're making an impression upon. And really, going back to myself, I even try to make a good impression on children, babies. I do. I really do. I work hard to try to make the right impression even upon children. Some of you might say, well, that doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It does matter. And most of the time, children wind up loving me. Some of them, it takes them a little longer than others. But I think some of them get a little bit intimidated by my voice. I don't know. I've been told that I can have an intimidating voice at times. But that being the case, I kind of try to change my voice for the children. Hey, dear. Okay, so it's what I do, y'all. It's what I do. So I want to encourage you, with all that is within you, strive to be impressive and not repulsive. Some of you can be repulsive because you are too impulsive. Think about that. But be impressive and not repulsive. And you'll be a blessing to others. And you'll discover that the way you present yourself will wind up being a blessing even unto you. That's all I have for today, y'all. I hope you learned something. I hope you've been inspired. I hope that you've become determined to make a good, lasting impression upon people, not just when you first meet them, but all the time. All right? Been my joy and pleasure sharing with you. Those of you that have been viewing us and you are viewing for the very first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you have not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications. We'll be right back tomorrow for our Faith-Filled Friday, where I'll be sharing with you some wisdom in terms of developing your faith, strengthening your faith, and your faith walk with God. I'm telling you, the Lord has been giving us some really good things to share. And I think it's been a blessing, because it's not only been a blessing to the hearer, it's been a blessing to me as well, because as I'm preparing to share with you, the Spirit of the Lord is speaking to me concerning certain things, and I become stronger and stronger in my faith, and I praise God for that. Again, we love you. I encourage you once again to continuously pray for our city, pray for our young people, Pray that the veil or the cloak of evil that has been draped over our city, that it be lifted, that it be removed, and that the Spirit and the anointing of God begins to manifest itself in the midst of the believers who reside here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. We're praying for those of you that are living outside of our area, that your communities be infused with the presence of God as well, because we love all people, not just people here in Kansas City, wherever you may be listening from. We love you as well. We want you to know that you are certainly in our prayers. We want to say to all of you that may be experiencing sickness or bereavement in your families, that we are praying for you as well. And remember that the joy of the Lord is always going to be your strength. So keep your faith and your focus in Him. And I declare to you that everything is going to work out just fine, so long as you continue to trust and believe God. Well, until tomorrow morning, as I often say, my prayer is that you have a blessed and wonderful rest of the day.